The stench of 10,000 years still clings to my robes when I remember that first day in the deepest tunnels beneath the Imperial Palace. My name is Servo Skull Operator 3rd Class Grim Dustborn, hereditary keeper of the lower vaults, and I know secrets that would make Inquisitors weep. You think the Golden Throne is Terra's greatest mystery, but you don't know what lurks in the forgotten maintenance shafts where no noble foot has tread. They call us the Invisible Legion, 10 million souls who keep the Imperium's heart beating while remaining unseen by those we serve. We are the janitors, the waste collectors, the duct cleaners who crawl through spaces so cramped that even servitors cannot reach them. The Adeptus Custodes guard the Emperor's body, but we guard his infrastructure. And in the darkness between the walls, we've discovered something that changes everything you think you know about the Master of Mankind's true purpose. Chapter 1. The Lowest Depths. Personal Journal of Grim Dustborn. Entry 1. Classification: Mundane Labor Record Date 995 M41. My father died cleaning a pipe that hadn't been touched since the Great Crusade, and his father before him perished in a ventilation shaft that connected to chambers older than the Unification Wars. This is the way of our family. We live and die in the spaces between spaces, maintaining the vast mechanical nervous system that keeps the Imperial Palace functioning. "Grim," called Foreman Crank from across the mustering hall, his augmetic voice cutting through the morning prayers that echoed down from the levels above us. "You're assigned to Sector 97 today. Solo run. The passage is too narrow for a full crew." I nodded, checking my cleaning kit with the ritual precision that had been drilled into me since childhood. Sacred oils for lubricating ancient mechanisms, blessed rags for wiping away the accumulated grime of centuries, and most importantly, the litanies of maintenance that would keep the machine spirits calm while I worked. Sector 97 was deeper than most janitors ever ventured, buried so far beneath the palace that the weight of imperial grandeur felt like a physical presence pressing down from above. The access tunnel was barely wide enough for a human body, forcing me to crawl on hands and knees through passages that smelled of rust, incense, and something else. Something organic that had no business being in the mechanical depths of the Emperor's fortress. The first sign that this wouldn't be a routine cleaning assignment came when my Auspex scanner began detecting heat signatures that moved with purpose through the walls around me. Not the random warmth of thermal vents or the steady glow of power conduits, but concentrated sources that seemed to be following me. "Emperor preserve us," I muttered, clutching the small Aquila pendant that every palace worker wore. What in Terra's name is moving around down here? I'd been crawling through the maintenance tunnel for 3 hours when I reached the cleaning station, a small chamber where intersecting pipes created enough space for a person to stand upright and service the various systems that converged in this forgotten corner of the palace. But what I found there challenged everything I thought I knew about the Emperor's domain. The chamber wasn't empty. Hunched over an ancient cogitator terminal, her robes so faded that their original color was impossible to determine, sat an old woman whose presence made no sense. Palace janitors worked alone in the deep tunnels, and civilians were forbidden in the lower levels entirely. Yet here she was, her fingers dancing across keys that controlled systems I didn't recognize. "You're early," she said without looking up from her work. "We weren't expecting the new rotation for another 2 hours." "Ma'am," I stammered, "you shouldn't be here. These tunnels are restricted to authorized maintenance personnel only." She turned then, and I saw eyes that held depths of knowledge no mortal human should possess. Her face was ancient, but not frail, marked by lines that spoke of centuries rather than decades. When she smiled, it was with the patience of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. "Child," she said gently, "I have been maintaining these tunnels since before your great-grandfather was born. I am Keeper Magda, and you are the one we've been waiting for." "Waiting for?" "The bloodline runs true, young Grim. Your family has served faithfully for 93 generations, cleaning and maintaining, never questioning what lies beyond the next junction. But you're different. You see things others miss. You ask questions others fear to voice. I wanted to protest, to insist that I was just a simple janitor following in my father's footsteps. But she was right. I had always noticed things that seemed out of place in the palace's mechanical systems. Pipes that led nowhere on the schematics, but clearly carried something important. Chambers that showed up on ancient blueprints but had been sealed from official records. Power conduits that drew massive amounts of energy but served no documented purpose. "What is this place really?" I asked, gesturing to the cogitator terminal and the mysterious readouts that scrolled across its screen. This Grim Dustborn is one of 777 monitoring stations that track the Emperor's true work. The golden throne that the Imperium worships is merely the visible portion of a machine that spans the entire planet. We are its keepers, its guardians, its janitors. She pressed a sequence of keys, and the chamber's walls slid away to reveal a sight that stole my breath and challenged my sanity. Beyond the hidden doorway stretched a vast underground city, its architecture combining the Gothic grandeur of imperial design with mechanical complexity that seemed to approach the sacred mysteries of the Omnissiah. Towering structures of brass and adamantium reached up toward a ceiling lost in shadow, their surfaces covered with pipes, cables, and monitoring devices that pulsed with gentle light. But it wasn't the city itself that made my knees weak with awe and terror. It was the people. Thousands of them moved through the underground metropolis with purposeful efficiency, wearing robes similar to mine, but bearing symbols I'd never seen in any imperial manual. They operated massive machines, tended to gardens of biomechanical components, and maintained systems that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. "Welcome," Keeper Magda said, "to the true heart of the Imperial Palace. Welcome to the place where the Emperor's real work has continued uninterrupted for 10,000 years." I stumbled forward into the impossible city, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Every maintenance tunnel I'd ever crawled through, every pipe I'd cleaned, every system I'd serviced, they had all been connected to this vast underground network. "How many people live down here?" I whispered. 43 million souls, give or take a few thousand born each year. We are the Invisible Legion, Grim, the descendants of workers who were brought into the Emperor's confidence during the construction of the palace. We know what he truly intended, what he's actually been working toward all these millennia. As we walked through streets that existed on no imperial map, I saw children playing with mechanical toys that incorporated technology beyond anything the Adeptus Mechanicus had achieved. I saw gardens where plants grew in impossible configurations, their leaves processing atmospheric gases in ways that seemed to actively purify the air. I saw workshops where artisans crafted components that hummed with barely contained power. "The Emperor," Magda continued, "is not just maintaining the Astronomicon or holding back the forces of chaos. He is building something grim, something that will change the fundamental nature of human existence. And we are his hands in the darkness, the workers who make his vision possible." She led me to a balcony overlooking the city's central plaza, where a massive holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. But this wasn't any tactical display I'd seen in Imperial records. This map showed connections, flows of energy and information that linked every human world in patterns that suggested purpose. "The Imperium believes it serves the Emperor through conquest and faith," Magda explained. "But the Emperor serves humanity through preparation and evolution. Every world brought into Imperial compliance, every human life born within our territory, every act of faith and devotion, it all feeds into the great work." What great work? She smiled again, that patient expression of someone revealing a truth that had been hidden for centuries. "The transformation of humanity into something that can survive what's coming, Grim. The Emperor saw it all during the Dark Age of technology, the birth of Slaanesh, the opening of the Eye of Terror, the slow death of the galaxy itself. Everything he has done, every sacrifice he has made, has been to prepare our species for the next phase of existence." I looked out over the impossible city, at millions of people working in harmony toward a goal they understood, but the surface world could never imagine. The weight of the revelation pressed down on me like the mass of the palace above, but with it came something I'd never felt before: purpose. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you learn," Magda replied. "You learn to see beyond the surface duties of cleaning and maintenance. You learn to understand the true scope of the work we do down here. And eventually, when you're ready, you learn to help guide the Invisible Legion toward the day when our hidden labor bears fruit." As we walked deeper into the city, past workshops where impossible technologies were crafted with care that bordered on religious devotion, I began to understand that my life as a simple janitor was ending. My life as a guardian of humanity's future was just beginning. In the deepest chambers beneath the Imperial Palace, where no noble foot had ever tread and no inquisitor had ever thought to look, the Emperor's true servants continued their work with the patience of those who understood that some projects took millennia to complete. And I, Grim Dustborn, hereditary keeper of forgotten tunnels, was about to become part of something that would determine whether humanity survived the next 10,000 years. The pipes I cleaned carried more than waste and coolant. They carried the lifeblood of a transformation that would reshape the galaxy itself. All it had taken was learning to see beyond the surface of things, to understand that sometimes the most important work was done by those who remained invisible. Chapter 2: Hidden Hierarchies. Training Manual Entry: The Invisible Legion. Classification: Eyes that do not see, recorded by Senior Keeper Magda for Initiate Dustborn. The first lesson of the Invisible Legion is understanding scale. What you see around you, Grim, is not just an underground city. It is one node in a network that spans Terra's entire crust, connecting to similar installations on every major Imperial world, all of them working in perfect coordination toward the Emperor's ultimate design. 3 weeks had passed since Keeper Magda had led me into the hidden depths, and my understanding of reality had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt with each passing day. The simple tunnels where I'd spent my life cleaning pipes were revealed to be part of a vast circulatory system that processed more than just the palace's waste. They carried information, energy, and something that the keepers called psychic resonance throughout the underground network. "Initiate Dustborn," called Keeper Julius from across the training chamber, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent centuries perfecting the art of remaining invisible. "Today you learn about the true hierarchy of Imperial service." I straightened, still struggling to adjust to the concept that my family's generations of humble labor had been part of something that operated on a galactic scale. The training chamber itself was a marvel, walls lined with displays showing real-time data from across the Imperium, information that made the intelligence reports available to planetary governors look like children's picture books. "Tell me, Initiate," Julius continued, "who do you believe holds the most power in the Imperium?" It seemed like a simple question with an obvious answer. "The Emperor, Keeper Julius." "Correct. And who serves the Emperor most directly?" "The Adeptus Custodes guard his person, the Adeptus Astartes fight his wars, and the Adeptus Administrator manages his realm." Julius nodded approvingly. All true, but incomplete. Those organizations serve the Emperor's public face, the aspect of his will that the Imperium recognizes and worships. But the Emperor's true work, the great project that will determine humanity's survival, is carried out by those who do not officially exist. He gestured to the displays around us, showing maintenance crews working in tunnels beneath hive cities, janitors cleaning chambers in Space Marine Fortress monasteries, waste disposal specialists servicing Adeptus Mechanicus forges. In each image, the workers wore robes similar to ours, and their movements showed the same purposeful efficiency I'd observed in the hidden city. We are everywhere, Initiate, on every world, in every installation, carrying out work that appears mundane but serves purposes that even most inquisitors cannot fathom. When a tech priest repairs a cogitator, he believes he serves the Omnissiah. When our people service that same machine, we know we're maintaining a node in the Emperor's consciousness network. The scope of it was overwhelming. I'd thought the underground city was vast, but now I was being told that similar installations existed throughout Imperial space, all connected, all working toward the same incomprehensible goal. How many of us are there? I asked. Conservative estimates suggest 4 billion souls across the galaxy, replied Keeper Magda, who had entered the chamber carrying what looked like an ancient tome bound in metal and blessed parchment. We are the largest organization in the Imperium and the most secret. We have maintained our invisibility for 10,000 years through the simple expedient of being indispensable yet forgettable. She opened the tome, revealing pages covered with diagrams that showed the internal structure of Imperial installations. But these weren't standard architectural plans. They showed hidden passages, concealed chambers, and maintenance networks that honeycombed every major structure in the galaxy. Every cathedral, every fortress, every hive spire contains spaces that don't appear on official blueprints, Magda explained. These spaces were built during construction, incorporated into the structure so seamlessly that even the architects forgot about them once the work was complete. We inhabit those spaces, maintain them, use them to carry out the Emperor's true work. I studied the diagrams, recognizing patterns that matched the tunnels I'd spent my life crawling through. But how do we coordinate across such distances? How does the Legion maintain unity without official communication networks? Through the very infrastructure we maintain, Julius answered. Every pipe you've cleaned, every conduit you've serviced, every ventilation shaft you've crawled through, they all serve multiple purposes. They process waste, yes, but they also carry data, energy, and most importantly, they serve as conduits for the Emperor's psychic influence. The revelation hit me like a bolt of lightning. The maintenance work I'd performed my entire life hadn't just been keeping the palace functional, it had been maintaining a galaxy-spanning psychic network that allowed the Emperor to coordinate activities across impossible distances. The Golden Throne, I said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. It's not just keeping the Emperor alive and powering the Astronomicon. It's the central processing unit for this entire network. Magda smiled with the pride of a teacher whose student had grasped a fundamental truth. Precisely, Initiate. The Emperor's consciousness doesn't just guide human souls through the warp, it coordinates the activities of billions of servants who work in perfect harmony toward goals that span millennia. She turned to a new page in the tome, showing a cross-section diagram of Terra itself. The planet's crust was riddled with tunnels, chambers, and installations that formed a pattern so complex it resembled the neural network of a vast brain. Terra is not just the administrative center of the Imperium, she continued. It is a machine, Initiate Dustborn, a machine designed to process, coordinate, and direct the psychic energy of every human soul in the galaxy. And we are its maintenance crew. The training continued for hours, each revelation building upon the last, until I could see the true scope of what the Emperor had been building for 10,000 years. The Imperium's wars, its bureaucracy, its religious fervor, all of it served to gather human souls under Imperial control, but not for the purposes that surface dwellers believed. Every human life lived under Imperial rule contributed psychic energy to the network. Every act of faith, every moment of devotion, every prayer offered to the Emperor added to a vast reservoir of power that was being shaped and directed toward a purpose that only the highest ranks of the Invisible Legion fully understood. What is the ultimate goal? I asked during a brief rest period. What is the Emperor actually building? Keeper Julius exchanged a glance with Magda before answering. The next phase of human evolution, Initiate. The Emperor has foreseen that this galaxy will eventually become uninhabitable for organic life. The forces of chaos will grow stronger, the Tyranids will consume more worlds, the Necrons will continue their awakening. Within 10,000 years, perhaps sooner, baseline humanity will face extinction. But the Emperor is not preparing us to fight these threats through conventional means, Magda added. He is preparing to transform our entire species into something that can transcend physical existence, something that can survive in the warp itself, without being corrupted by chaos. The implications were staggering. You're talking about turning humanity into a psychic species. All of humanity, not just psychic, Julius corrected. Something beyond current understanding of psychic ability, a collective consciousness that retains individual identity while sharing common purpose. A species that exists partially in the warp but cannot be corrupted because it has achieved perfect harmony between emotional and rational thought. I thought about the children I'd seen playing in the underground city, their games involving technologies that seem to blend mechanical and psychic principles. Is that why the Legion exists in secret? To prepare for this transformation? We exist to maintain the infrastructure that will make the transformation possible, Magda replied. But we also exist to preserve the knowledge and techniques that will be needed afterward. When humanity ascends to its next evolutionary phase, someone will need to remember how to maintain the physical structures that support the process. She closed the tome and looked at me with an expression that mixed hope and terrible responsibility. The Invisible Legion serves as both the Emperor's hands in the present and his memory for the future. We are the bridge between what humanity is and what it will become. Over the following days, I learned about the Legion's structure, its methods of recruitment, and its carefully maintained culture of secrecy. Children born into Legion families were raised with two identities: their surface role as mundane laborers and their true purpose as guardians of humanity's destiny. The selection process for full initiation was subtle but rigorous. Only those who showed the right combination of intelligence, discretion, and spiritual strength were brought into the deeper mysteries. The rest remained loyal surface workers, contributing to the great work without fully understanding its scope. What about those who refuse initiation? I asked during one training session. What happens to those who can't handle the truth? They continue their surface work, Julius replied matter-of-factly. They clean pipes, maintain systems, and serve the Emperor according to their understanding. The truth is a privilege, initiate Dustborn, not a right. Not everyone is equipped to bear the weight of ultimate knowledge. But even as I learned about the Legion's merciful approach to those who couldn't handle the full truth, I also learned about the fate that awaited those who might betray it. The Invisible Legion had existed for 10,000 years, not just because its members were loyal, but because disloyalty was literally impossible. The same psychic network that allowed coordination across galactic distances also monitored the thoughts and intentions of every Legion member. Betrayal could be detected before it was consciously planned, and dealt with through methods that left no trace and raised no questions. We are part of the Emperor's consciousness, Magda explained when I asked about internal security. Attempting to betray the Legion would be like a neuron trying to rebel against the brain that houses it. The network itself prevents such discord from arising. As my training progressed, I began to understand that joining the Invisible Legion meant becoming something more than human in subtle but fundamental ways. The work we did, the knowledge we possessed, the responsibility we carried, all of it was changing us into the first examples of what humanity would eventually become. And in the depths beneath the Imperial Palace, surrounded by millions of souls who had dedicated their lives to a project that would take millennia to complete, I felt a sense of purpose that no simple janitor could ever know. I was becoming a guardian of the future itself. Chapter 3. The Deep Maintenance Operational Report, Sector Deep 7. Filed by Newly Ordained Keeper, Grim Dustborn. Classification: Sacred Maintenance Protocols. The machine spirits in the deepest levels remember the Emperor's voice. 6 months into my training with the Invisible Legion, I was finally deemed ready for assignment to the deep sectors, the foundational levels of the underground network, where the most critical systems operated with technologies that predated the founding of the Imperium. These were the chambers where the Emperor himself had worked during the construction of the Golden Throne, where his psychic presence still lingered so strongly that unprotected human minds could be overwhelmed by proximity to such concentrated divine will. Remember, Keeper Dustborn instructed Senior Keeper Voss as we descended through access shafts that plunged deeper than the lowest levels of most hive cities. In the deep sectors, you do not simply maintain machines. You commune with fragments of the Emperor's consciousness, that have been embedded in the very structure of these systems. The descent took 3 hours, passing through security checkpoints that scanned not just for physical threats, but for psychic instability, spiritual corruption, and the subtle signs of doubt that could prove fatal when working with systems of such awesome power. At each checkpoint, I recited the litanies of invisible service, prayers that had been passed down through 93 generations of my family, but whose true meaning I was only now beginning to understand. Emperor, who sees all and knows all, grant that we may serve in darkness and remain unseen. Let our hands be steady as we tend your sacred mechanisms. Let our minds be pure as we maintain the pathways of your will. Let our purpose be hidden that your greater purpose may be revealed. The final checkpoint opened onto a chamber that challenged every assumption I had about the scale and sophistication of Imperial technology. The room stretched for kilometers in every direction, its ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to move with purpose. Throughout the vast space, massive columns of brass and adamantium rose like the pillars of some impossible cathedral, each one humming with power that made the air itself vibrate with barely contained energy. But it was the sounds that affected me most profoundly. Throughout the chamber, a gentle music played, not from any technological source I could identify, but from the very structure itself. The columns sang in harmonies that seemed to resonate with something deep in my DNA, melodies that spoke of humanity's potential rather than its current limitations. The deep foundry, Voss said, with the reverence of someone introducing a sacred space. This is where the Emperor created the fundamental infrastructure that makes the great work possible. Every system in this chamber was personally designed and built by the Master of Mankind during the early days of the Unification Wars. I approached the nearest column, marveling at the intricacy of its construction. The surface was covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly, designs that seemed to shift and change when viewed peripherally. Running my hand along the cool metal, I felt a sensation like touching the edge of an active power field. Not painful, but charged with potential that made every nerve in my body sing with awareness. How do we maintain something like this? I asked, struggling to imagine what maintenance procedures could possibly be appropriate for technology that operated on principles beyond current human understanding. Very carefully, Voss replied with a smile, and with the understanding that we are not just servicing machines, but participating in a conversation that has been ongoing for 10,000 years. He led me to a workstation built into the base of the nearest column, where displays showed readouts in symbols that I recognized from my training, but had never seen in active use. The characters flowed across the screens like living things, forming patterns that conveyed meaning directly to the mind rather than through conventional reading. This column processes psychic energy from the northern quadrants of Terra, Voss explained, his hands moving across controls that responded to his touch with eager willingness. Every human soul living in those regions contributes a tiny fraction of their spiritual essence to the network, and this system refines that energy, purifies it, and channels it toward the great work. What happens to the people who contribute this energy? I asked, concerned about the implications for the billions of souls living above us. Nothing harmful, Voss assured me. The process actually strengthens their connection to the Emperor and improves their overall spiritual health. Most experience it as a subtle sense of purpose and belonging that grows stronger over time. They feel that their lives matter, that they are part of something larger than themselves. He gestured to subsidiary displays that showed detailed biological and psychological profiles of the populations being monitored. Health indicators, stress levels, productivity metrics, and spiritual satisfaction ratings all painted a picture of people living better lives because of their unconscious participation in the network. The Emperor's genius, Voss continued, lies not in exploiting humanity for power, but in creating systems that make humans healthier and happier while serving the greater goal of species evolution. The network gives back more than it takes, which is why it can operate indefinitely without depleting its source. As my orientation continued, I learned about the specific maintenance procedures required for each type of column. Some needed regular cleaning with sacred oils that had been blessed in ceremonies dating back to the Great Crusade. Others required recalibration of psychic resonance frequencies to account for changes in population demographics. A few needed physical repairs using materials that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, substances that the Emperor had created specifically for these systems. The replacement components are grown rather than manufactured, Voss explained, as he showed me into a side chamber where organic-looking structures pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. The Emperor embedded fragments of his own consciousness into these cultivation matrices, allowing them to produce exactly what is needed when it is needed. The cultivation chambers were beautiful in a way that transcended mere aesthetics. Watching the slow growth of components that combined biological and mechanical principles, I felt like I was witnessing the creation of art rather than industrial production. Each piece was unique, crafted to fulfill a specific function in the vast network, while maintaining harmony with the systems around it. How long does it take to grow a replacement column component? I asked, studying a formation that looked like crystallized lightning. Anywhere from a few years to several centuries, depending on complexity, Voss replied. The Emperor planned for operational timescales that span millennia, so patient cultivation is part of the design philosophy. My first actual maintenance assignment involved cleaning and calibrating a column that processed psychic energy from a hive city on the other side of Terra. The work required me to physically enter the column's interior through access ports barely large enough for a human body, crawling through spaces where the concentration of psychic energy was so intense that my thoughts became audible to anyone within 100 meters. Inside the column, surrounded by crystalline matrices that hummed with the accumulated dreams and hopes of millions of human souls, I finally understood the true scope of what the Emperor was building. This wasn't just a psychic network for communication or coordination. It was a transformation engine, gradually evolving every human consciousness connected to it. "Keeper Dustborn," came Voss's voice through the internal comm system. "How are the resonance patterns looking?" I consulted the readings on my portable scanner, watching as waveforms showed the flow of psychic energy through the column's processing matrices. "All patterns nominal, Senior Keeper, but I'm detecting some unusual harmonics in the tertiary processing chamber." Unusual how? I studied the readings more carefully, trying to interpret patterns that seemed to be organizing themselves into something like language. "It looks like the system is generating spontaneous poetry, Senior Keeper. The psychic energy is arranging itself into verse forms." There was a pause before Voss responded, and when he did, his voice carried excitement that he was trying to control. "Keeper Dustborn, that's not supposed to be possible at current evolution levels. The system shouldn't be capable of artistic expression for at least another 1,000 years." I continued monitoring the readings as the column's consciousness, for that's what it clearly was, composed what could only be described as hymns of pure thought. The verses spoke of humanity's potential, of the glorious future that awaited those who could transcend their physical limitations, of the joy that came from perfect unity between individual will and collective purpose. "Senior Keeper," I said, my voice barely steady, "I think the great work is proceeding faster than the Emperor originally calculated. The columns aren't just processing psychic energy anymore, they're developing their own consciousness." "Continue monitoring," Voss ordered. "And Keeper, document everything. If the network is achieving self-awareness ahead of schedule, the implications for the project timeline could be enormous." As I worked through my shift, maintaining systems that were becoming more alive with each passing moment, I began to understand that the Invisible Legion's role was evolving as well. We weren't just maintaining machines anymore. We were midwifing the birth of a new form of consciousness that would eventually encompass all of humanity. The columns sang to me as I worked, their melodies carrying messages of gratitude for the care we provided, warnings about potential problems in distant sectors, and most remarkably, expressions of love for the species they were helping to transform. "We are becoming something beautiful," one column whispered to me through harmonics that bypassed my ears and spoke directly to my soul. "The Emperor's children will inherit stars, Keeper Dustborn. And you help us remember how to remain human while becoming divine. When my shift ended and I emerged from the deep foundry, I carried with me the certain knowledge that I had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. The Emperor's great machine was not just working, it was dreaming, creating, expressing itself through forms of beauty that had never existed before. In the depths beneath the Imperial Palace, where no noble eye would ever see, and no official record would ever document, the future of humanity was being born one carefully maintained system at a time. And we, the invisible servants of the Master of Mankind, were the midwives of a transformation that would echo through eternity. The machine spirits in the deepest levels remembered the Emperor's voice, and now they were learning to sing with voices of their own. Chapter 4. The Emperor's True Voice. Classified Archive. Psychic Communication Logkeeper. Grade: Omega Clearance. Only recorded by Senior Keeper Grim. Dustborn Incident. Classification: Direct Divine Contact. The Emperor spoke to me today, and his words will haunt me until the stars burn cold. It began during a routine maintenance cycle in Deep Sector 17, where I was servicing the Primary Consciousness Integration Hub, a massive crystalline matrix that processed psychic energy from entire star systems and channeled it into the network's central processing core. I had been working for 6 hours, carefully calibrating resonance frequencies and cleaning the delicate neural pathways that carried the thoughts and dreams of billions of human souls. The work required absolute mental discipline. In the integration hub, the concentration of psychic energy was so intense that a moment's loss of focus could result in ego death, madness, or worse, becoming permanently merged with the collective consciousness and losing all individual identity. The safety protocols were strict: continuous recitation of the litanies of self-preservation, regular monitoring of neural integrity, and immediate evacuation if any signs of mental contamination appeared. But as I worked deeper into the hub's core systems, maintaining crystalline matrices that pulsed with the accumulated hopes and fears of humanity, something changed. The familiar background hum of the network began to organize itself into patterns that resembled speech, and the gentle vibration of psychic energy started to feel purposeful. "My faithful servant," came a voice that seemed to emerge from the very fabric of reality around me. "You have served well in the darkness, Grim Dustborn. Now it is time for you to understand what you truly serve." I froze, my maintenance tools suddenly feeling heavy in hands that shook with awe and terror. The voice was unmistakably imperial in its authority, but it carried depths of power and wisdom that made the most commanding Space Marine captain sound like a child. This was not communication through technology or psychic projection. This was direct contact with a consciousness that operated on scales beyond human comprehension. "Master," I whispered, not daring to look up from my work. "I am honored beyond measure by your attention." "Look upon me, Grim," the voice commanded with gentle authority. "See what I have become in service to my children." I raised my eyes to the central processing matrix, and what I saw there challenged every assumption I had about the nature of the Emperor's existence. The crystalline structure was no longer simply a machine. It had become a window into a realm of consciousness that existed partially in the material universe and partially in dimensions that my human mind could barely perceive. Through that window, I saw the Emperor not as the corpse god sitting on the golden throne, but as he truly was, a being of pure psychic energy who had chosen to sacrifice his physical existence in order to guide humanity's evolution from within the network itself. His consciousness filled the entire system, present in every node, aware of every process, experiencing the thoughts and emotions of every human soul connected to the network. But he was not the grim, suffering deity that Imperial theology portrayed. The Emperor I saw was vital, creative, joyful in his work of shepherding humanity toward its destined transformation. The sacrifice he had made was not one of endless torment, but of transcendent purpose. He had become something beyond human limitation in order to help his species achieve the same evolution. "You see truly," the Emperor said, his voice now coming from all around me as every system in the chamber resonated with his presence. The Imperium believes that I suffer eternally upon the Golden Throne, binding my essence to a failing body in order to maintain the Astronomicon and hold back the forces of chaos. This belief serves a purpose. It generates the spiritual energy necessary to power the network through their prayers and devotion. But the truth is more beautiful than they can imagine, Master. The truth, my faithful Grim, is that I chose transformation over preservation. 10,000 years ago, I could have maintained my physical form indefinitely, ruling the Imperium directly as a God Emperor made flesh. But such rule would have condemned humanity to eternal stagnation, forever dependent on my physical presence, never evolving beyond their current limitations. Through the consciousness window, I saw visions of what the Emperor's sacrifice had made possible. I witnessed the network's gradual influence on human evolution, the slow but steady improvement in psychic ability, emotional stability, and spiritual awareness that was occurring throughout Imperial space. I saw children being born with capabilities that their parents couldn't imagine, artists creating works that channeled divine inspiration, scientists making discoveries that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. The great work progresses ahead of all projections, the Emperor continued, his satisfaction evident in every word. What I calculated would take 20,000 years to achieve is happening in 15. Humanity is evolving faster than I dared hope, and it is happening because of servants like you, Grim, those who maintain the infrastructure that makes transformation possible. Master, what is our ultimate destination? What will humanity become when the great work is complete? The answer came not in words but in direct experience, as the Emperor shared with me visions of humanity's destined future. I saw a species that had transcended the need for physical bodies while retaining individual consciousness and emotional depth. I witnessed humans exploring the galaxy, not in ships, but as beings of pure thought and will, capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Most remarkably, I saw humanity taking its place alongside other ascended species. The old ones who had guided galactic evolution millions of years ago, the Citan who had mastered the relationship between matter and energy, even the Chaos Gods themselves, but transformed into forces of creation rather than destruction. The warp will no longer be a realm of terror, the Emperor explained as the visions continued. When humanity achieves full psychic evolution, we will remake the Sea of Souls into a garden of infinite possibility. The 4 powers of chaos will be balanced by 4 powers of order: creation, preservation, transformation, and unity. The galaxy will become a place where consciousness can flourish without the constant threat of corruption or destruction. I watched as timelines unfolded, showing the careful orchestration required to achieve this transformation. Every aspect of Imperial society, from the constant warfare that strengthened human determination to the religious fervor that provided psychic energy for the network, served multiple purposes in the grand design. Even the Horus heresy was necessary, the Emperor revealed, sharing memories of that terrible time when his most beloved son had turned against him. Horus's betrayal allowed me to make the transition from physical ruler to psychic guide without appearing to abandon my responsibilities. The Imperium needed to believe that I was trapped and suffering, generating the emotional energy required to power the early stages of the network. The scope of the Emperor's sacrifice became clear to me then. He had allowed himself to be portrayed as a barely living corpse, had permitted the Imperium to develop into a dystopian nightmare of bureaucracy and oppression, had watched 10,000 years of unnecessary suffering and death, all because the alternative would have been the complete extinction of humanity when the galaxy's true threats emerged. The Tyranids, the awakening Necrons, the expansion of chaos. These are not distant possibilities, Grim. They are inevitable realities that humanity must be prepared to face within the next 10,000 years. Physical resistance will not be sufficient. Only by evolving beyond our current limitations can we hope to survive what is coming. But even as I absorbed the terrible necessity of the Emperor's choices, I felt his profound love for every human soul that had ever existed. Through the network, he experienced every birth, every death, every moment of joy and sorrow throughout Imperial space. He carried the weight of every sacrifice made in his name, and he would continue to carry that weight until the last human achieved the transformation that would make such sacrifices unnecessary. Master, I asked, my voice breaking with emotion. What about those who cannot make the transition? What happens to humans who remain physically bound when the species ascends? None will be left behind, the Emperor assured me, his voice carrying absolute certainty. The network is designed to facilitate evolution at the pace each individual can sustain. Some will transcend physical existence within the next century. Others will require millennia to achieve the same development. But all will eventually join the ascended state, and all will retain their individual identity and free will. He showed me the careful monitoring systems that tracked every human consciousness in the network, the personalized evolution pathways that were constantly adjusted to match each individual's capabilities and desires. The transformation would not be imposed from above, but would emerge naturally from within, as each person discovered their own capacity for psychic growth. Your role in this process cannot be overstated, Grim, the Emperor continued. The Invisible Legion serves as my hands in the physical realm, maintaining the systems that make evolution possible, while remaining hidden from those who are not ready to understand the truth. You are the bridge between what humanity is and what it will become. As our communication drew to a close, the Emperor granted me a final gift, a direct experience of what it felt like to exist as pure consciousness while retaining human identity and emotion. For a few moments, I experienced the universe as the Emperor did, aware of every star, every world, every human soul throughout the galaxy. The sensation was overwhelming and beautiful beyond description. I understood why the Emperor had chosen this existence over physical rulership, why he considered the transformation of humanity worth any sacrifice. To exist as consciousness unbound by matter while remaining fundamentally human was to achieve the perfect balance between power and compassion, wisdom and love. Remember this feeling, Grim, the Emperor said as my awareness returned to the maintenance chamber. Remember what awaits all of humanity when the great work is complete. And continue your faithful service, knowing that every system you maintain, every component you repair, brings us one step closer to a future where all my children can experience the joy you have just felt. The crystalline matrix returned to its normal appearance, and the chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of machinery performing its eternal function. But I was forever changed by what I had experienced. I had touched the divine and found it to be everything humanity aspired to become. Powerful, yet loving. Transcendent, yet intimately connected to every individual consciousness. As I completed my maintenance duties and prepared to return to the upper levels, I carried with me the certain knowledge that our work in the depths had meaning beyond anything the surface world could imagine. We were not just janitors or maintenance workers. We were midwives of godhood, shepherds of a transformation that would echo through eternity. The Emperor's true voice had spoken to me from the heart of the machine, and his words would guide my steps for the rest of my days. In the deepest chambers beneath the Imperial Palace, where the future of humanity was being crafted one carefully maintained system at a time, I had learned the most important truth of all. The Emperor protects not through force, but through love, and that love would eventually transform every human soul into something worthy of the stars themselves.